It's needed for pigs. Laughter so hot, die gets raw. Bathed in sorrow, much could reclaim what's rightfully mine.
Welcome back, players. I'm Jack with 36 Cancel, and this is Coco the Wise Cat. It's Goblin Slaying season, players, and that means we're back with another Goblin Slayer deck tech. In this video, we'll be looking in particular at one interesting part of the Goblin Slayer set that makes for a deck in and of itself, the Standby Climax. This is Standby Goblin Slayer. Standby is a very popular take on Goblin Slayer as a competitive choice for players that believe the Priestess build will get hated out too easily. But believe you me, this is not your run-of-the-mill Standby deck. Now, having piloted several different decks that utilize Standby, I was extremely confused when I saw this list. I mean, look at it. It looks nothing like a conventional Standby deck, or for that matter, even what you'd imagine a Goblin Slayer Standby deck would look like. Aren't these Cowgirl Brainstormers our main Standby combo? Why are we only running 2 of them? Isn't that just the standard level 1 combo for the meta deck? There aren't even any cool 1/1s to stand by, like any self-respecting Standby build would have. And what about the 2/2s? We're only running 2 of those. What are we supposed to stand by at level 1? And wait, what's this level 3 lineup? Isn't that the trial deck healer that just gets a power boost, and the Goblin Slayer that has a pay 3 burn ability also from the trial deck? And what about that? Isn't that the expensive healing event in a Standby deck? What does this deck even do? Well, at least that was my initial reaction. I looked at lists similar to this for a long time and I just didn't get it at all. It's so different than what a normal Standby deck looks like that we've come to know in English. But you know what they say, players, don't knock it until you try it. Well, I tried it, and now it's time to tech it so that you players at home can see just how this very different Standby deck works. And there's no better way to do that than just going through the levels and talking about the role each of these cards play in this unique deck. As always, we'll start with a level 0. There's quite a lot of variety here, but let's start with something rather obvious. Energetic childhood friend, Cowgirl. She's our Brainstormer and our Standby combo. As far as brainstorming goes, she's a tap self-salvage, which is pretty standard but not bad. But she also has the Climax combo with Brand New Morning, which is one of the best triple rares in the game. When you play the Climax, you can pay 1 and return her to your hand. If you do, you can choose up to one of your order characters and stand them. So what this is supposed to do is let you stand a character you just stood by so you can attack with them this turn instead of waiting. It also frees up a backstage slot should you trigger another Climax. It's definitely a great combo, but here's the weird thing. We almost never use it. We're only running 2 of her, and according to most lists, that's superfluous in and of itself. Many Standby builds only elect to run 1 Cowgirl and then 2 of the Priestess Brainstormer. I'm only running 2 Cowgirls because A, I need 6 other Priestess Brainstormers for my other decks, and B, Ushikai Musume is what dreams are made of. But before I lose myself, let's get back on track by reiterating that there's actually not much in the deck that benefits from this Standby combo. You saw that we only run a few level 2s that could be stood up by Cowgirl, but we seldom do it. It's a great combo for more aggressive Standby-centric builds, for sure, but this deck just isn't one of those, and as we move on, we'll see why. But still, having the option to do this helps our game plan. Anyway, let's go forward so we can see more pieces of this strange puzzle. Next, we'll go to the only 4 of in the level 0 lineup, Predetermined Outcome Goblin Slayer. And this is one of the most oppressive level 0s in English, dare I say. At base 1500, if you have 5 or more cards in your hand, he gets plus 1500 and a level. What's more, he's a chaser, which means that at the beginning of your opponent's attack phase, you can move him to an open position of your center stage where there's a character facing him, and to top it off, characters facing him can't side attack. Look, this card is oppressively good. Unless you're breaking 3500 power at level 0, assuming he doesn't have any buffs, you're not beating this card. And you can't really avoid it either. It kills reversers, stock kickers, clock swappers, small enemy runners, and pretty much any character that's not just plain overstatted. It's straight up one of the most powerful level 0s printed in English, and its board presence at 0 is nothing short of frightening. Small wonder it's a 4 of. But moving right along, there's a ton of tech conclusions to cover, so let's start with A Moment of Peace, Cowgirl. She's only base 1k, but she has 2 come into play abilities. First, when she comes in, you can pitch a Climax to salvage a character. And second, when she comes in, you can pitch a torch to salvage a character. Just playing her to the stage can completely change your hand and what you can do with that turn and the next one. With her, you'll never be stuck with the wrong cards in your hand. It also turns your torches, which are Akatsuki events, into salvages, which is pretty nifty. Next up, we have Earth Mother's Disciple Priestess. She's a base 2k drop searcher, but she also top checks when she's played, letting you put the top card of your deck onto the bottom or top. So you can search and then top check, or top check and then search. The ability to stop yourself from shuffling into a climax or shuffling away something you want for a bad search is a really good ability, and the top check ability in general is especially valuable in Goblin Slayer. She cannot, however, stop you from shuffling into 2 climaxes. But what might help you with that is an ordinary piece cowgirl. She's another low-power cowgirl with 2 come-into-play abilities. First, you can top check, and if you see an order character, you can draw one and pitch one. Second, if you discard an order character, you can draw a card. Now, since again, you can layer these effects in any order you want, do I need to tell you how strong this is? She's a box topper promo, probably the best one in English right now, and she enables turns, climax combos, and brainstorms that you just have no business succeeding with. I'd run her as a 2 or 3 of, but honestly, I just don't have enough, because you always gotta have more cowgirl. But a little sword maiden in the mix never hurt anyone either. That's why we have 2 versions of her. First up, Ultimate Miracle Sword Maiden. She's a global 5 back row, which isn't bad, and we can put her into the clock to salvage a level 3 event that needs to see both her and Priestess, so we do want that. She goes the extra mile for us, and of course, she makes your chasers 3,500. But speaking of making Goblin Slayer more lively, as it were, we have beloved Archbishop Sword Maiden. She's base 1500, and when she attacks, gives one of your order characters plus 1500 power. The nice thing is that she's not one of those boosters that can't choose herself, because she can just become a 3k body, but she can also make your chasers 4,500 for the turn, so take that as you will. Now, she has a second ability. If you have no other rested characters on your center stage, you can pay 1 and rest her. It's not something you'll use often, but it's not a bad option to have. It's a great way to prevent a climax from getting stuck in your stock early in the game, because if you play it out, this deck will build you a pretty decent portfolio. And to help us just a little bit more with that, we have the final tech inclusion, Quick-Witted Decision Priestess. She gives all characters in front of her plus 500, and when you play an event, you can put her into your stock. So again, she gives us a boost, and then provides free stock when she outlives her usefulness. She's not a bad way to round our level 0 game at all, considering how many events we run. And level 1 is where that whole business starts. In fact, we play almost as many events as characters. Let's cut to the chase and find out why. Precise Battle Tactics Goblin Slayer, the tour de force of this entire set. The cream of the crop of level 1 climax combos. Better than My Fate to Bear Aaron? Probably not, but if anything was going to give Aaron a run for his money, this would be it. And Goblin Slayer, just like Aaron, grabs us a busted event, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. First off, if you have 2 or more other order characters, he gets plus 2k power. So if you're playing the game, he's a 106k, and when he attacks, if battle with one's life at stake is in your climax zone, you can perform one of the following actions. You can either search your deck for an event called Torch, or you can salvage an event called Torch. So let's pause there for a moment and realize that this effect is totally non-interactable and can pretty much never miss. It's a search or a salvage. No matter what Torch is, this is undeniable advantage. Even if Torch was a 1-1 event that clocked you and did nothing else, at least it's a free card. But that is not what Torch does. In fact, Torch does 2 things, depending on which one you use, of course. Torch is a 1-0 event no matter how you light it, but it comes in 2 versions. The first one is a backup from the trial deck, and the other is a regular event from the main set. The trial deck Torch, the one we run in spades, is a 1-0 Akatsuki event that can be played as a backup. Do I need to tell you how good this is? Being able to control your deck during your opponent's turn and yours? I don't think I do. So let's move to the other Torch, which we tech as a 1-of, and this Torch lets you choose one of your opponent's characters and move it to an open position of their stage, no restrictions. This lets you really screw up your opponent's board, and for free might I add, as well as on demand, since you can search or salvage either Torch with your combo. If your opponent leaves even one stage position open, even by way of using a bomb or level reverser, you can pull their precious brainstormers and back rows up to face the wrath of Goblin Slayer, and in the same attack, bring back the Torch straight from the waiting room. Kind of insult to injury, don't you think? And even though I really don't think it needs to be said, remember that even though these are different cards, they both have the same name, so 4 Torches is your limit. And there you have it, one of the best level 1 combos in English right now. The Christmas costume that never misses, the Prince to Aaron Yeager's King, Goblin Slayer, and Torch. There's no denying how good this is on so many levels. But what does it have to do with standby? Well, nothing. Goblin Slayer is a 1-0 with a climax combo of his own. Sure, standbying him is good at level 0, but that's not exactly your typical target. Usually those are 1-1 with some sort of stupid board presence ability, and that's something lacking in our level 1 lineup. In fact, the only thing left in our lineup is a standard inclusion, which is the set's 102k backup. It's a Priestess, which is nice for our level 3 event that we haven't seen yet, and 102k backups are never bad. But still, it's not very standby-ish, is it? Well, here's a hot dose of truth. The level 1 Goblin Slayer and the Torch combo are just that good. You run them in the standby deck because with their raw power and free advantage, there's hardly anything better you could ask for. So why even run standby then? Well, stay with me, because we're heading into some of our juicier targets at level 2. Okay, maybe it's not as juicy as you thought it might be, but there's still some meat here. And speaking of meat, we do have a 2-2 with 2 soul. It's only a 2-of, but here's Unyielding Stance Goblin Slayer. a 2/2 6k with 2 soul that gets plus 1k for each of your other order characters, and he has Hand Encore. Obviously unplayable without standby, but outrageously good to put on the stage for free at level 1. And just as a friendly reminder, we can bounce our Cowgirl Brainstormer to stand him if we hard play the Climax, but he's only a 2 of, because honestly, who needs him when we can just play 3 Goblin Slayer level 1s? Sadly, when you're running the best, not much else can compete. But still, just having the potential to put this on the board at level 1 is scary, and by no means bad. But you know what's dumber? Standing by a Cowgirl. She's only a 1 of, but with so many torches and searches and mills and God knows what else, she'll probably be there for us. But she's only a 2/1. It doesn't seem to capitalize on standby that well. Well, let me pitch you an idea. Let's say you're sitting at level 1 with a field of 3 Goblin Slayers and you trigger a standby to pull this Cowgirl out. Now, she's a global 1k, so all of your 106ks are now 107ks. Now imagine if you play a torch, which all of these Goblin Slayers are grabbing for you, that you could give a character 500 power times the number of order characters when you played it once per turn. So in essence, once per turn, she turns a torch into a 102k backup Akatsuki event. Seems pretty stupid, right? Well, with Standby Goblin Slayer, torches, and a little Cowgirl, this is our reality. This board state is pretty damn good. With a deck so full of events, a global 1k that turns all those events into 2k boosts on either turn is pretty nuts, even beyond level 1. Now remember, you can only do this once per turn, but still, it's not like we don't also run 102k backups anyway, so enjoy your 9k 1-0s. Now there's also a 2/1 Priestess that occupies the back row for us. She gives all your level 3s in front of her plus 2k, and she discard bonds for a level 3 masked figures named Goblin Slayer. Now this is less of a standby target, but it's a great back row for the other good part of standby decks, the good early plays, because we do have those. And of course, the bond isn't bad considering we run the level 3 as a 1 of. You'll notice we run a lot of 1 and 2 ofs. Torches really enable some stupid stuff. And speaking of torches, let's talk about Haversack. And this event is called Haversack, not Duffel Bag. Get with it, Bushi. And it's a 2/0 event that salvages either a torch or a scroll of gate. It's like running a 5th torch, and it lets you do some really obnoxious things, like use the move torch, play Haversack, and then salvage the move torch to move another character into the wrong place in your opponent's board, and then just get it back again with your combo. Yeah, it's pretty stupid. By the way, Scroll of Gate is one of the 2 level 3 events we run in this deck, because why wouldn't we, right? So why don't we cut to the chase and check out this deck's top end? Well, we've got it all. Early plays, healers, back rows, and finishers. Pick your poison, but a good part of any standby deck is the early plays, and we've got 2. First, we have Burdened by Fate Goblin Slayer. He's a 4 more character early play and gets plus 500 for each other order character on your turn. And when he comes in, you can pitch a card from your hand to search your deck for an event card. This could be Torch, Haversack, Scroll of Gate, or even Resurrection. Pretty obvious why he's here, so let's move to the second one. We're also running Bursting with Vitality Cowgirl. She comes out early if you have 2 or less climaxes in your waiting room, gives 500 times X where X is order on attack to another character, and also top checks X on play where again X is order. She comes out early, gives power, and digs. She's a great tech 1 of. And hey, she can always dig for a standby climax, or a level 1 gate combo, because that's probably still good at this point. So what about the back row? Because back row level 3s, after all, are amazing standby targets, and this is where Witch comes in. She gives everything in front of her plus 2k, and every time damage you take on your opponent's turn isn't cancelled, you can top check to the top of the deck or waiting room. So she's a power boost to our already jacked field, and she can start filtering out non-cancels as soon as she comes out, which in all likelihood will be level 2, so you'll get great mileage out of her. She's not super incredibly broken, but she's an excellent standby target. So let's talk about what else we have here. Well, there's a trial deck level 3 Priestess that heals and gets plus 500 for each other order. Wait, is that it? Yep, we're running a vanilla level 3 healer from the trial deck. When I first looked at this, I was absolutely lost. But then you try it out and you start to realize that being big and just healing at level 3 makes things difficult for your opponent, especially with those back rows. Real talk, if the set had something more suited to the deck, we'd run it. But this basic bitch is surprisingly fit for this role. And lastly, in the character department, there's yet another trial deck card. Masked Figures named Goblin Slayer is just a 10k that can't be backed up against, that you can pay 3 and deal 2 damage on reverse with, no strings attached. He's a 1 of, and he's the bond target to the level 2 Priestess. It doesn't seem like much, but again, when you try it, it's actually pretty effective when you need it. And don't worry, even as a 1 of, we have the tools to find it. So that does it for our characters, but our level 3 isn't done, because this deck actually runs 2 different level 3 events. The first of which is Scroll of Gate, a 3/3 event that simply, if you have 5 or more order characters, you can return one of your opponent's characters to their hand. It's got the tech to bounce back something that's stopping you from finishing the game, or stopping something that's going to finish you. Now, having a full stage usually isn't a problem, but if you're going to use it, just keep in mind that you need all hands on deck. It's also salvageable with Haversack and searchable with your early play, so when you need it, it's not hard to find. And finally, we have Resurrection. This card is expensive, costing 4 stock at level 3 and requiring you to discard a card with Priestess and a card with Sword Maiden in their name. But when you do, you can take any 5 cards in your clock and just put them into your waiting room, a totally new lease on life. This is also searchable by your early play and salvageable with your level 0 Sword Maiden. And with all the free advantage you're generating with excess stock, board presence, and event searching, why not just totally stop yourself from dying? Are you starting to get the picture here? It's not that we're standing by super broken targets, getting insanely big, or laying down devastating finishers. It's that when you combine standby triggers with some of the best combos in Weiss, with the amount of free advantage and board presence you're getting from just playing the game and playing your cards, you're just tough to fight. And the addition of events that can stop your opponent's finishers and totally turn the clock back on your life is just tough to deal with. But on top of that, and probably the biggest takeaway from this entire build, is that without extremely specific tech from precious few sets, it's almost impossible to hate out. A lot of what happens on your side of the board is just undeniable to your opponent, and for the most part, you're not paying a premium for it. As I was testing this deck in locals and in practice matches later, I really started getting the point. A lot of cards in the deck, including level 3 trial deck Healing Priestess, aren't super busted on their own, but combined, they just make a deck that's hard to fight and hard to kill. And again, most of it is just free and effortless. Now that's not to say the deck doesn't take finesse to play, because it takes a lot. You're making all the cards in your deck work together to generate advantage, instead of just relying on one card with busted text to carry the game for you. Well, except the level 1 Goblin Slayer and Torch, of course. But if you can create idiotic situations where you're playing torches, getting your early plays, searching for duffel bag, re-torching, moving opponents' characters, and thinning your deck at the same time, the deck gets really hard to deal with really fast. When you heal down at level 3, you still have access to all the things like torches and scrolls of gate that make you hard to finish, and at lower levels, you're putting a lot of pressure on your opponent just by playing your cards. And on top of that, the deck is chocked full of tools to get you what you need when you need it. You can move an absolutely incredible amount of cards around on your turn and sculpt your hand to exactly what you need. Again, with your torches, your level 0 filters, and your early plays that grab things for you, and the recursion of all these elements through each other, you can set yourself up for success basically every turn. It'll take practice, exceptionally good fundamentals, and an open mind, but this deck is scary, and if you run it, you'll be scary too. Almost as scary as Goblin Slayer in a cave full of little green hobbits. Players, this was a super fun exercise in playing and testing. I had my doubts about this deck, but that's because I'm a slow learner and a bad player. Playing the deck really showed me its merits and why it's catching on. If you don't feel like playing the full Priestess combo because you're afraid the meta will hate it out too much and you're not feeling up to Adventure Time, Standby Goblin Slayer is a great deck that's tough to argue with. I'll be rocking it for a while myself. Will I be bringing it to the shop challenges now that the locations have been posted for Springfest? Maybe, but I do want that Priestess promo, so look for me across the table if you're hitting up those tournaments, and watch out for Standby Goblin Slayer. This deck is not to be underestimated. Alright, it's been fun, but in the coming days I'm going to have a lot of traveling to do, and we've still got more Goblin Slayer to tech, so I've got to get on that. Until then, I'll see you players across the table, and as always, thanks for watching. Peace.